Hello, I'm Corey Brewer, and today I'm going to be talking about grocery store site suitability analysis within Baltimore City, Maryland. The inspiration for this project actually comes from food scarcity, which about 10% of Americans suffer from as of 2021, meaning they don't know where their next meal is going to come from at some point during the year. It's not always consistent, it's variable, they have ups and downs. However, food deserts is the way to measure that on a geographic scale. Food deserts are areas in which it is low income, low access. USDA parameters is the area needs 20% or more of the population living below the poverty line and more than 1 mile from a grocer urban or more than 10 miles from a grocer in rural areas. Now, because we're working in a city, we're going to go off of the 1 mile from a grocer. Now, just some quick demographics on Baltimore City. There's about 576,000 people within the city itself. 20% live in poverty, and approximately 23.5% live within a food desert. If you end up working out the math, that's 135,000 people with low income, low access to food, and a significant problem ahead. Inflation's at an all-time high currently, with food is leading the way. It is inflating at a faster rate than other necessary goods, and that's on top of rent and everything else, which stretches people even further than they were before. So on the left, you'll see where the current grocers are within Baltimore City. And on the right, these are the low income, low access areas. You'll see some in the north central part of the city grouped together, the western part of the city, and then the south part of the city towards the port of Baltimore. Now, and I'll talk further of why some of these actually exist and some of the variables that kind of lead to their existence in the first place. Because it's not just as cut and dry as current grocers. Now, to identify areas where a grocer could be placed, I utilize Boolean suitability. The first parameter was the lot had to be currently vacant with an acre or more in size and commercially zoned. So the acre is important. I did statistics on current existing grocer parcels, and it ranged from anywhere from 0.15, which is extremely small, and they share parking spaces and other necessities with a shopping center, and they weren't the primary on it, up to 53 acres where the grocer provided the parking lot and kind of was running a shopping center, or whoever owned the grocer was running the whole shopping center. And that was quite a large range. So I settled on a 1 acre lot, which seemed to be suitable for grocers such as Aldi, Lidl, and property in the city is expensive, so limiting size may actually play into the advantage in overhead. And then the zoning was just to make it clean. No legal fees trying to convince the council to change zoning. There wasn't anything additional you need to do. You just know your left and right limits off the bat based on city ordinance. This final one is the most important as far as establishing new areas that serve underserved communities. It must be outside that 1 mile service area for existing grocers. You obviously can't walk through buildings, and that's why driving distance was used rather than straight line. And with utilizing these variables, ended up narrowing down the 4 potential sites. Site 1 used to be a grocer. Site 2 is more of an industrial area with suites. The overhead actually was the best way to capture the parcel itself. Site 3 is an old high school, and Site 4 is just undeveloped land it borders a park, a hospital. It just isn't on a major road. It's probably why it's undeveloped. But site 1 is centrally. The only one that actually falls in a food desert, interestingly enough, is site 4. Initially, I thought the analysis would lead to the sites existing within food deserts and factors such as low income for those areas, just driving investors away. And it turned out to be zoning was the largest issue, zoning and parcel size. The north central and northwest are highly residential with small parcels. So there wasn't a good spot to even put a grocer if you wanted to. Where the south is all zoned for port activities, warehouses, and is very specifically geared towards that industrial, and grocery stores just don't fit into that commercial category, and therefore that's where those deserts exist from on a basic level. Now, in order to support a grocery store, you need people. According to the Tampa Bay Business Journal, you need 20,000 people to support a grocer, just a single grocer. And now they were talking more on the Publix, Kroger, big box store, not city style grocers, but at least it gives us a high number. That is, and I figured in Aldi, which takes up significantly less room, has less people, less overhead, can probably operate at half of that, and we have the medium in between. So these thresholds identify how long it takes in driving distance to reach 10,000, 15,000, and 20,000, with some error due to the precision options I chose. So just to be aware of that, like site 2 at 12,595 isn't quite 15. It just was how the algorithm worked it out. However, site 1 ended up having the shortest distance for all population thresholds. And that will play a major role in the site suitability analysis, which is based off of total population being a positive influence and weighted at 30%, meaning the higher the population, the higher the weight. And the poverty rate being positively influenced at 30%, meaning the higher the poverty rate, the higher the weight. And the reason why I chose that, even though it's against business models, is because this project set out to identify locations that could identify vacant lots that are most beneficial to the underserved community, and the low income portion of that was able to be displayed here. And then distance from competitors, the further it is, the higher the weight. Makes sense. You don't want to be in that same pocket as 4 other grocery stores. A lot of competition is a driving factor for that one. And total crime index, if is a negative influence, the higher that crime rate, the lower the score. So business being business is if people are scared to come to your area, you won't get a lot. So that was taken into account. And it ended up showing that site 1 was the best site, the most suitable based on the vacant lots currently in Baltimore City to host a new grocer. It's centrally located, a high population density, and that shows, and it has a high poverty rate. It ranked first in poverty rate and population, third in true crime index and distance from existing grocers, which once again makes sense. More people, more crime, especially when you're talking about lower income areas. If you have a lot of low income, a lot of people, typically crime goes with it. Not necessarily causation, but general trend. Whereas the distance from existing grocery stores, because it is centrally located, is negatively, it's just a fact of it being centrally located. There's a lot going on in the Inner Harbor, and that just put into that factor. Now, in conclusion, site 1 is the most suitable for a grocery store and used to be one. However, that grocery store did ultimately go out of business. Understanding why and doing additional research to identify missing variables that might mitigate investment risk is imperative to actually make a good business decision. Because at the end of the day, yes, food deserts are bad. Yes, food scarcity is bad. But if the business can't survive, it might not be the option for that community. Outside options such as farmers markets or community gardens that help kind of take at least the edge off of some of the scarcity and cost might be better alternatives. And finally, you need a true business model. I'm not including out factors such as size of the grocer, the overhead included, requirements placed on by the brand. I don't know that backside information, so it couldn't be included. And therefore, a true conclusion of which site's the best and if it's viable couldn't be reached. It's just site 1 is the best site based on available information currently. That's all I have. I will now turn it over for questions.